Seinfeld, the legendary sitcom that redefined American comedy, where the small things in everyday life became cultural icons. Audiences laughed at the antics and quirky personalities of the four main characters, but few knew that behind the scenes was a series of silent tragedies, losses, loneliness, and the price of fame. The tragedy behind the glamour takes us to discover the true people behind that endless laughter. Ruth Cohen, as Ruthie Cohen, the fading smile. After an empty diner. Born in Los Angeles on January 28, 1930, Ruth Cohen came to Seinfeld when she was nearly 60 years old, a familiar face in Monk's Cafe where every story began and ended. Although she appeared in 101 episodes, the name Ruth Cohen was rarely remembered by the audience, much like her own quiet life off-screen. After the studio lights, Ruth was a woman who had endured many losses. She lost her husband early, lived alone in a small apartment in California, and continued to work quietly to make ends meet. No one knew that the woman who often smiled while serving coffee on screen had gone through years of solitude and illness. As laughter erupted on the screen in real life, Ruth faced the silence of old age with no children or family by her side. On August 23, 2008, Ruth Cohen passed away at the age of 78. Her ashes were interred at Mount Sinai Memorial Park, where many Hollywood stars rest. Although not famous, the image of her silent waitress became a symbol for the artists behind the scenes, those who dedicated their lives to art without needing the spotlight to shine on them. Estelle Harris, as Estelle Costanza, laughter, hiding loneliness. Born in New York on April 22, 1928, Estelle Harris stepped into Seinfeld when she was 61, an age when many had left the stage, yet she began to become a phenomenon. The role of Estelle Costanza, the shouting but affectionate mother, brought the audience refreshing laughter throughout 27 episodes. However, behind that acerbic voice was a soul that had endured much hurt and solitude. Before Seinfeld, Estelle had a long and precarious journey. She struggled with family life, raised children alone during financial hardship, and had to postpone her artistic dreams for decades. When fame finally came late, she faced new pressure, the fear of being typecast as the annoying mother, the fear that she would only be remembered for her humorous shrieks. In real life, Estelle was sensitive, easily moved, and frequently battled mild depression and the fear of being forgotten. In her final years, despite her health weakening, she maintained the habit of recording voiceovers for animated films, seeing it as a way to keep herself alive in the world of imagination. Estelle Harris passed away on April 2, 2022, at the age of 93. She left behind laughter imbued with humanity, a rare, gentle light, amidst a glamorous, yet utterly solitary Hollywood. Jerry Stiller as Frank Costanza, the anger, concealing a kind heart. Born on June 6, 1927 in New York, Jerry Stiller joined Seinfeld at the age of 62, embodying Frank Costanza, the volatile, hilarious, yet unforgettably eccentric father. After 26 episodes, his shout of serenity now became an icon, making audiences laugh. But behind that image was a long life of loneliness, pressure, and years of being forgotten in the very profession he loved. Before Seinfeld called his name, Jerry was one half of the famous comedy duo Stiller and Meara, alongside his wife actress Ann Meara. They were once considered icons of 1960s American television. But when the stage lights dimmed and fame faded, he faced a stalled career and prolonged depression. Jerry once confessed that Frank Costanza's outbursts were actually his way of venting his internal frustrations, the conflict, the disappointment, and the fear of being forgotten amidst a rising generation of young actors. After Seinfeld, Jerry continued acting, but his health gradually weakened. He cared for his sick wife for many years, and after her passing, he became quiet, rarely appearing in public. Jerry Stiller passed away on May 11, 2020, at the age of 92. The man who made millions laugh departed peacefully, leaving behind a simple legacy, the warm smile of an artist who used humor to conceal the deepest wounds in his heart. Liz Sheridan, as Helen Seinfeld, Old Memories. amidst new laughter. At the age of 60, when many actors had already retreated from the spotlight, Liz Sheridan stepped onto the small screen in the role of Helen Seinfeld, Jerry's kind, caring mother appearing in 19 episodes. She was born on April 10, 1929 in Rye, New York, a peaceful area she later always referred to as the beginning of unfinished dreams. Few know that before becoming the national mother on television, Liz lived a bright yet sad youth in Hollywood. When she was a dancer, she had a deep romantic relationship with James Dean, the legendary figure of American cinema. That romance, brief and fateful, left an unhealed wound in her. Dean's death in 1955 took Liz many years to regain balance in life, and she rarely spoke of it later, only saying, "I once knew what true love was and lost it forever." After Seinfeld, Liz still participated in a few small projects, but her health weakened. She lived alone in a small house in California, raising dogs and writing a memoir about Dean, as a way to converse with the past. On April 15, 2022, just 5 days after her 93rd birthday, Liz Sheridan passed away in her sleep. No fanfare, no tragedy, only the gentle memory of a woman who loved passionately and smiled radiantly on screen despite having a lifelong crack in her heart. Barney Martin as Morty Seinfeld, fame arriving too late. Before becoming Jerry's funny father in Seinfeld, Barney Martin was a New York police officer, an ordinary man in the city that never sleeps. He was born on March 25, 1923, also in New York, and only entered acting after the age of 40. When he took on the role of Morty Seinfeld at the age of 66, appearing in 20 episodes, Barney almost believed his career would forever be limited to anonymous supporting roles. Then Seinfeld brought him the opportunity to be known to the audience, but it was also a belated reminder of the years that had passed. Before that, he had spent many years struggling with the profession, auditioning hundreds of times, receiving low pay, and sometimes having to work as a driver to make ends meet. Although he brought roaring laughter to the screen, Barney was quiet in real life, admitting that he came to success too late to still know how to enjoy it. Friends recalled after a scene finished, he would often sit alone in a corner looking around the set with distant eyes. Barney Martin passed away on March 21, 2005, just 4 days before his 82nd birthday. He passed away in Studio City, California, where he had lived simply with his wife for decades. Barney's name may not be mentioned as often as his co-stars, but the image of that frugal, stubborn, and deeply loving father is etched in the hearts of fans, a role that brought laughter created from the very feelings of someone who knew what it meant to be forgotten. Len Lesser as Uncle Leo, the late call in the evening shadow. There are faces that, when they appear, make the audience immediately burst into laughter. Len Lesser was one such person. Born on December 3, 1922 in New York, he came to Seinfeld at the age of 67 in the role of Uncle Leo, the annoying but affectionate uncle appearing in 14 episodes. After half a century working in obscurity, Len finally had a role that made people remember him, but that spotlight came too late when old age had already enveloped his life. Before that, Len was a soldier in World War II, witnessing friends fall under fire. War memories haunted him his entire life, making his eyes always contain something sad even when he was smiling. After leaving the military, he chose acting as a way to find human breath again, but for many years only received supporting roles in hundreds of films and television shows. Without a wife or children, Len lived in a small apartment in Burbank, California, which he jokingly called the city of roles whose names people didn't have time to remember. When Seinfeld brought him back to the light, Len still did not see it as glory. He said, "I just want people to laugh. I don't need them to know who I am." In his final years, he contracted lung cancer, but still maintained the habit of walking every morning around his neighborhood, greeting everyone with a kind smile. Len Lesser passed away on February 16, 2011, at the age of 88. A lifetime of solitude, but to the audience his call of "Jerry, hello" still rings out like the final warm greeting from an artist who lived fully for the stage, even if only in his own evening shadow. Jerry Seinfeld as Jerry Seinfeld. humor in the cage of fame. In 1989, when Seinfeld aired, Jerry Seinfeld was only 35, a comedian at his peak, born on April 29, 1954 in Brooklyn, New York. He was both the lead actor and the co-creator of the show, appearing in all 172 episodes. The role of Jerry Seinfeld, himself but exaggerated, became an American cultural icon, elevating his name to legendary status. However, that light also closed the door on ordinary life, trapping him within the image he created. After Seinfeld ended, Jerry faced a rare tragedy of the successful. He had reached the summit, and there was nowhere left to go. Every subsequent project was compared, every attempt at renewal was tied to the past. In interviews, he often laughed when talking about loneliness, but his eyes showed signs of weariness. Jerry's private relationships also did not escape the public eye. People discussed and analyzed every small detail of his life as if he no longer had the right to be himself. Now, at the age of 71, Jerry still stands on stage, but the laughter seems more subdued. He does not try to escape fame. He has simply learned to live with it. Fame, he once said, is a luxurious room without windows. Amidst the applause, Jerry Seinfeld remains the solitary man bearing the smile of someone who fully understands the price of becoming a legend. Michael Richards as Cosmo Kramer. Genius, lost after the laughter. In the 1990s, few people could make audiences laugh as easily as Michael Richards, the man who embodied Cosmo Kramer, the eccentric and unpredictable neighbor in Seinfeld. Born on July 24, 1949 in Culver City, California, Richards stepped into this role at the age of 40, appearing in all 172 episodes. With his unique physical comedy and instinct, he turned Kramer into a phenomenon, a symbol of freedom, defiance, and difference. But just as the world was roaring with laughter, Richards quietly entered his own personal tragedy. After Seinfeld, he could not escape Kramer's overwhelming shadow. Every other role was compared, every attempt at renewal was rejected. Then, in 2006, an outburst at a comedy club in Los Angeles when Richards lost control, uttering racial slurs in anger, destroyed his entire reputation in a matter of minutes. From a beloved star, he became a symbol of failure, of self-destruction. Subsequently, Richards nearly vanished from Hollywood. He lives in seclusion, refusing interviews, only occasionally appearing to apologize to the audience. Close relatives say he is haunted, tormenting himself daily for that moment. At the age of 76, Michael Richards lives quietly with his family away from the media, dedicating his time to meditation and writing. A man who once made the world laugh now chooses silence to atone for himself and for the ghost of Kramer, the imaginary friend who never left him. Jason Alexander as George Costanza, the comedian carrying perpetual insecurity. Born on September 23, 1959 in Newark, New Jersey, Jason Alexander came to Seinfeld at the age of 30, a seasoned stage actor with a passion for drama more than television. The role of George Costanza, appearing in all 172 episodes, quickly became the soul of the show, intelligent, insecure, selfish, and intensely human. But as the entire world laughed at George, Jason gradually felt himself disappearing behind the character. For years, Jason Alexander had to live with a bitter paradox. He was a talented actor, once nominated for a Tony Award, but people only remembered him as George Costanza. Whenever he appeared in another film, audiences would laugh because they thought he was playing George. This very association trapped Jason between glamour and limitation, a loop that gradually eroded his confidence and passion. After Seinfeld ended, he went through many failed projects, from films to television shows, and admitted to suffering from depression because no one needed Jason. They only needed George. Off-screen, Jason is a warm person who loves music and teaches acting, but still carries a silent sadness about his career. He said, "I made millions of people laugh, but few ever saw how truly sad I was." At the age of 66, he still appears sporadically on stage and television, but with a lighter frame of mind, like a man who has learned to forgive the very character that made him immortal yet confined him for half his life. Julia Louis-Dreyfus as Elaine Beans, the queen of comedy. amidst life's quiet storms. When Seinfeld premiered in 1989, Julia Louis-Dreyfus was only 28, young, smart, and bold. Born on January 13, 1961 in New York, she embodied Elaine Baines, the only woman in the group of 4 main characters appearing in 171 episodes. Elaine was a new icon of modern womanhood, sharp, free, daring to laugh, and daring to live. But off-screen, Julia had to shoulder immense pressure to prove that a woman could hold her own in the world of comedy, which was often dominated by men and prejudice. After Seinfeld, Julia struggled to find her own identity. Many projects failed, and the phrase, "the Seinfeld curse," began to be attached to her, as if Elaine's success was a peak that could not be surpassed. She confessed that at times she felt every laugh aimed at me tasted sour. But Julia did not give up. She returned strongly with The New Adventures of Old Christine and then Veep, becoming the first woman to win more than 10 Emmy Awards. Behind those spectacular awards, Julia had to face her own personal tragedy. In 2017, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. Amidst chemotherapy sessions, she maintained her smile, wrote thank you letters to fans, and continued acting. "Humor didn't save me," she once said, "but it helped me choose how to live." At the age of 64, Julia Louis-Dreyfus still stands in the spotlight. Not to dazzle, but to remind everyone that behind the laughter sometimes lies a soul that has known fear, loss, and the courage to overcome it. Seinfeld concluded as a mirror of the modern era, where laughter no longer serves to teach lessons, but to expose human selfishness, triviality, and sometimes emptiness. No one learned anything, no one became better. But that is precisely what made the show chillingly real. After that glamour, the lives of the actors also reflected the same paradox. The louder the laughter, the deeper the loneliness. And it is fascinating looking back at television history that Seinfeld is the antithesis of an older icon, the Andy Griffith Show. If Mayberry once represented an innocent, kind, and morally upright America, then Seinfeld appeared as a declaration, no more lessons, only the naked reality. These two worlds, one warm, one cold, are the opposite extremes of the same cultural flow. Now, as we close the era of bittersweet laughter in New York, let us turn back time to the 1960s, where the opening whistle of the Andy Griffith Show rings out in the golden sun of the countryside. But behind Mayberry's gentle smile, was it truly a pure world as we remember? And the lives of actors are even more heartbreaking than you might know. Don Knotts as Barney Fife. Don Knotts, born on July 21, 1924, took on the role of Deputy Barney Fife in The Andy Griffith Show when he was 36 years old. The character of Barney, nervous, bumbling, and famously carrying only one bullet in his shirt pocket, was not only the comedic soul of Mayberry, but also won Knotts 5 prestigious Emmy Awards. Yet behind the stage lights, his real life was a series of personal losses, psychological struggles, and a lingering loneliness that followed him to the end. Growing up in a poor family in West Virginia, Don was the youngest child of an alcoholic father suffering from mental illness. His father often threatened him with a knife, creating an atmosphere of terror that turned Don into a quiet, withdrawn child. His father died when Don was just 13, leaving him to live in a shabby boarding house with his mother and 3 brothers. Those early wounds became the emotional wellspring of his anxious yet hilarious characters later in life. Don once said he didn't play Barney, he was Barney. His brilliant career couldn't fix his unstable personal life. Knotts went through 3 marriages, 2 of which ended in divorce. He raised his daughter as a single father, but was haunted by feelings of inadequacy. Friends described him as a sweet but insecure man, always worrying about his health and self-worth. As he aged, he became increasingly reclusive. Macular degeneration left him nearly blind, forcing him to give up stage and television and live his final years in near total darkness. On February 24, 2006, Don Knotts died in Los Angeles due to pneumonia complications linked to lung cancer. He was 81 years old. He was laid to rest at Westwood Memorial Park, the same cemetery where his close friend and co-star John Ritter would later be buried, a man Knotts considered a surrogate son. A bronze memorial plaque was added years later, etched with images of his most famous roles, including Barney, the lifelong companion, and the mask he never truly took off. His net worth at the time of his death was estimated around $20 million, the reward for decades spent bringing joy to others. Andy Griffith as Andy Taylor. Andy Samuel Griffith was born on June 1, 1926, in Mount Airy, North Carolina, a small town that later inspired Mayberry, where he portrayed Sheriff Andy Taylor in The Andy Griffith Show. When he took on the role in 1960, Griffith was just 34 years old, but his warm Southern voice and calm, upright demeanor instantly turned him into a national television icon throughout the show's 8-season run. Griffith's on-screen success stood in stark contrast to his turbulent and painful private life. His first marriage to Barbara Bray Edwards seemed solid for over 2 decades but ended in divorce in 1972. They adopted 2 children, including Andy Jr., a son who brought Griffith both pride and unimaginable grief. Andy Jr. fell into alcoholism at a young age, and Griffith tried repeatedly to save him from destruction, but every attempt failed. In 1996, Andy Jr. died alone at the age of 38. His death devastated Griffith deeply. Griffith's health began to seriously decline in the early 1980s. In 1983, he was suddenly paralyzed from the knees down due to Guillain-Barré syndrome. For 7 months, he relied on a wheelchair and endured painful physical therapy to regain movement. During what seemed like the twilight of his career, he landed the role of Ben Matlock, a seasoned lawyer from Georgia in Matlock, a character that not only revived his fame but also brought immense financial success, allowing him to build a peaceful life afterward. Behind the ever-smiling TV persona were long periods of tension. After 2 failed marriages, Griffith found a final haven with Cindy Knight, his 3rd wife, nearly 3 decades younger. Though life with Cindy brought some balance, the memories of struggling with illness, broken marriages, and his son's death never faded. Close friends said that behind the scenes he would often sit in silence for hours, as if burdened by an unspeakable sorrow. It was later revealed that during Matlock, Griffith was still mourning his son and worrying about the heart that had undergone bypass surgery in 2000. On July 3, 2012, Andy Griffith passed away at his home on Roanoke Island, North Carolina, after a heart attack. He was 86 years old. Per his wishes, no funeral was held, and he was buried just 5 hours after his death. At the time, his estate was estimated at around $60 million, a reflection of both his talent and his sacrifices. Howard McNear as Floyd Lawson. Howard Turbill. McNear was born on January 27, 1905, and joined The Andy Griffith Show when he was 55 years old, portraying Floyd Lawson, the quirky, chatty, yet friendly barber of Mayberry. With his signature stammering voice and never-ending rambling stories, he became one of the most beloved supporting characters on the show. But behind that humorous exterior was a tragic journey marked by illness and heartbreak until his final breath. McNear had already built a brilliant career in radio, most notably as Doc Adams in the radio version of Gunsmoke. But his television peak came with the role of Floyd on The Andy Griffith Show. In 1963, however, McNear suffered a major stroke that left the left side of his body paralyzed. It seemed his career had ended until Andy Griffith himself insisted on bringing him back to the set, even though McNear could no longer stand. From that point on, viewers only saw Floyd seated on a bench holding a newspaper in his left hand, while his right hand continued acting out the rest of his life with quiet determination. Despite his brave return, the after effects of the stroke worsened. He gradually lost the ability to memorize lines, became panicked during tapings, and ultimately had to leave the show in 1967. In his final appearances, he was filmed sitting in a car or shot from a distance. Off camera, he frequently suffered emotional breakdowns, haunted by the feeling that he was no longer himself. Howard McNear passed away on January 3, 1969, just weeks before his 64th birthday at the Veterans Hospital in California. The cause of death was pneumonia, a complication stemming from the earlier stroke. He died quietly, leaving behind his wife Helen and son Christopher, as well as a character etched forever in the memories of millions. Jim Nabors as Gomer Pyle. James Thurston. Nabors was born on June 12, 1930 in Sylacauga, Alabama. When he first appeared on The Andy Griffith Show as the dim-witted but endearing gas station attendant Gomer Pyle, he was already 32 years old. A Southern outsider with a heart of gold and a voice that would soon surprise the world. Originally hired for a one-off appearance in 1962, Nabors' portrayal was so beloved by audiences that his character quickly became a series regular and eventually earned his own spin-off, Gomer Pyle, USMC. Though best known for his wide-eyed innocence and signature catchphrase, Golly Jim Nabors was far more than just a comic relief. Behind the exaggerated accent and goofy persona was a man of great sensitivity, hidden sorrow, and extraordinary musical talent. From a young age, Nabors struggled with severe asthma, which kept him from participating in most childhood sports. Instead, he turned to music and performance, eventually earning a degree in business administration from the University of Alabama. He moved to Los Angeles and worked as a typist at a television station, performing in small nightclubs at night, where he was eventually discovered by Andy Griffith himself. But even with rising fame, Nabors remained painfully aware of the pressures he faced. He was a gay man living in a time when Hollywood and the world demanded silence. For decades, he kept his private life hidden from the public eye, fearing exposure could destroy his career. Rumors about his sexuality circulated widely, including a fabricated story that he had secretly married actor Rock Hudson, which both denied. Though untrue, the gossip highlighted how isolated and cautious Jim had to be, even while surrounded by adoring fans. In 1975, Jim moved to Hawaii, where he found peace and privacy in a plantation-style home in Honolulu. There, he met Stan Cadwallader, a former firefighter who would become his life partner for nearly 4 decades. Though they lived quietly and discreetly for most of their relationship, Jim and Stan were finally able to legally marry in 2013, shortly after same-sex marriage became legal in Washington state. In his final years, Nabors battled various health issues, including a liver transplant in 1994. Yet he never lost his gentleness, his love of music, or his appreciation for the fans who had stood by him all his life. On November 30th, 2017, Jim Nabors passed away peacefully at his home in Honolulu at the age of 87. The world lost a man who had once made it laugh through simplicity and tenderness, and who had quietly endured life's heaviest burdens with dignity and grace. George Lindsey as Goober Pyle. George Smith. Lindsey was born on December 17, 1928 in Alabama, and stepped into the role of Goober Pyle in The Andy Griffith Show in 1964 when he was 35 years old, wearing overalls, a gas station cap, and flashing a goofy but sincere grin. Goober, the slow but sweet mechanic, became a comedic icon in American pop culture across generations. But when the studio lights faded, Lindsey's real life proved to be a path marked by contradictions and disappointment. Lindsey once dreamed of becoming a physical education teacher, but fate led him to the stage and screen. After serving in the Air Force and graduating from the American Theater Wing in New York, he pursued Broadway and was even briefly considered for the role of Mr. Spock on Star Trek. But destiny locked him into one name, Goober. The role that brought him fame also became a cage he couldn't escape. Lindsey openly expressed frustration that Hollywood never gave him more serious roles and resented being typecast as the lovable dummy for decades. His personal life was no less complicated. His 36-year marriage to Joanne Herbert ended in divorce in 1991. Though he had 2 children and 2 grandchildren, Lindsey spent his final years in solitude. His only steady companion during this time was businesswoman Ann Wilson, who remained by his side until the end. Behind the comedic mask was a weary heart that had battled heart disease for years before he passed away on May 6, 2012 in Nashville. He was 83 years old. Despite his regrets, Lindsey left behind a legacy of compassion. He donated over $1 million to the Alabama Special Olympics, established scholarships, hosted film festivals, and became a local hero in Jasper, where a road was named in his honor. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at just $2 million, but what he left behind was a warm heart beneath the humor. Which character was your favorite? Share your memories in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories from classic television.